Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the February 28th, 2024 Auburn School Committee meeting. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, I'll start down here for introductions tonight.
Corin McWiggin, Ward 1.
Pam Hart, Ward 2.
Pamela Albert, Chair.
Connie Brown, Superintendent.
Pat Gaudier, Ward 3.
Adam Platt, City Council Representative.
Connor Dufour, Student Representative.
Jillian Dumais, Student Representative.
Mark Conrad, Business Manager.
Sue Doris, Assistant Superintendent.
Thank you, everyone. I'm not sure where Ward 5 is tonight, but hopefully on his way. So we'll start with our consent agenda, including the approval of tonight's agenda, the approval of the minutes of the February 7th, 2024 meeting, the approval of administrative staff second probationary contract renewal, and the approval of administrative staff continuing contract renewals. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Pam, Corin, second. All those in favor? Motion passes. Do I have anyone for public participation tonight? Going once. Okay. Moving on to our presentation tonight. Dr. Brown.
Thank you very much. It is my pleasure to present to the Auburn School Committee the 2024-25 proposed operating budget for the Auburn School Department. And to begin the presentation, I'd like to give you an orientation to your budget books. And this follows similar patterns from before, but I think it's a good start because we do have some new members. And the budget books need to be understood, and it's part of my job to make sure that you understand how they're put together. So I'll start at the beginning. So the budget books are organized according to the cost centers, or sometimes referred to as articles, in the law. So the first piece you'll have is the presentation, a PowerPoint copy for you this evening, and then followed by that, you will have the budget calendar. And if you look on the budget calendar, we are in the weightiest part of that presentation, which will be all of the cost center presentations. And Mr. Conrad and I make it a point to really stay on target for those presentations. We think that's important for transparency, and it's important to keep us all organized. So the next section is the budget message. And previously I mentioned to you how this came to be. So back when Brian Carrier was a representative from the City Council to the school committee, he asked if I, as a superintendent, could write a budget message. That was something new. And it was something that the City Council had, but the school department did not. And so I said that was a great idea and readily took that on. And so what I do in the budget message is, I refer to it a lot, but second is it gives you at a high level what each of the cost center changes are going to be. So I won't read it to you tonight. I think that what you'll probably do, as you have in the past, is take home the whole thing and look at it when you have free time. But I would encourage you to start with the budget message, because that's the most succinct document to communicate to you what the changes and costs are in the budget. So following that, you'll have our revenues and our cost centers. That will be presented to you later in the budget development process, usually toward the end. Then as you get into the cost center 1, those are each of the schools. Tonight, each of the administrators has under 3 minutes to present their budgets. And they can, if they choose, cede their time to their longer-winded colleagues if necessary. But we also want the school committee to feel free to ask questions as we go throughout this process. So that's something that we've added over time as we try to upgrade each of our budget presentations. Either Dr. Doris or Mark or I will record all of the questions that are asked by board members. And if we know the answer, we'll give it to you that evening. And if we don't know the answer, we'll come back the next week and give it to you. And then we put all of those questions and the answers on the website. So if somebody happened to be looking at the website and they were unable to watch the school committee meeting, they'll see everything that was asked and a corresponding set of answers. And that's what I think is among the most important parts of budget, and we'll talk about this in a minute, and that is the transparency and the accountability that goes along with a budget presentation. So the rest of the budget, as you go through the various sections, and you'll see that the different accounts, for example, I'll pick on Sherwood because it's easy. You'll see that the Sherwood budget request is there, and then in each of the accounts, you'll have staffing data, and we'll go over that in detail as the administrators present their budgets. So going through the various cost centers, so let me see if I can advance my slide here. So this is the budget calendar. I just talked about that a minute ago. And then these are the various centers. I'm going to go actually back one today, back one. So for today, we have the orientation of the budget books, and all of the schools, 9 of them, will present their budgets and ratios and students and et cetera. And then on March 6th, we have special ed, and CC stands for cost center. We have other instruction, and that includes athletics, student and staff support, that includes technology, that includes Dr. Doris's department, and then, of course, by all of these have school committee discussion. And then the 13th goes continuing on. 6 is my office, 7 are the school offices, 8, 9, transportation and facilities. And then on the 20th, we have adult ed, and Jennifer Tyner will be here to present that. And then there will again be discussion about what figure to take to the city council meeting and to the public hearing. The public hearing is the 3rd, and the city council meeting is the 1st. So that gives you a sense of what that calendar is going to look like. So again, as part of my goal for the budget process, and this is one that's carried over the years, is to be transparent, goal-focused, and you'll see this when you read the budget message, because the budget presented to you should reflect a way to get to your goals. It's not a disconnected document. It really is informed by the school committee's goals that were reviewed and discussed and adopted again. And so that's part of this. We talked about the school presentations, I talked about the websites, talked about the budget message, and we'll get to individual schools. So I've oriented you for the binders and would ask that you bring them with you for each of the next meetings. You really will need those. And then we'll talk about student-teacher ratios, any changes, ASD printouts, that's what I just referred to. And now we get to the real number. So here we go, folks. So my proposed budget, and just as an important step in this, so it is, at this point in time, it's the superintendent's budget. And until you adopt it as yours, it is still mine. And so you can ask to make changes, but ultimately, when we go to the city council, it is at that point the school committee's budget. It's no longer the superintendent's budget. So my proposed budget for the Auburn School Department for 24-25 is $62,234,945. And that represents a 5.4% increase over the 23-24 budget. The mill rate for education, and I need to emphasize this is for education only, this is not the city mill rate, is $9.24. That's based on the current assessed value. And we continue to use, and I confirmed this with the city today, a $150,000 home. Now, I have to say as a caveat, you'd be hard-pressed to find a $150,000 home in Auburn right now, and I understand that. But we've used this as a baseline, and if that did apply to you, then it would be $70.97 for a tax increase. So you can scale that up. If your home is worth more than that, you can figure out that roughly for the school side, it would be roughly $71 per $150,000 of valuation. So the budget drivers, and this is important because they're big numbers. So we provide health insurance. We have estimated, Mark and I, a 12% increase on our costs. And to be candid, Mark and I are nervous about that. We are part of the Maine Benefits Trust pool, and that means that you can get rated up to the upper limit of what the pool will apply, and we've received some indication that that's going to be our instance for next year. So 822 may not do it. Another big driver in the budget is special education. It's up over $1 million, $1,004,021. Director Shaw is going to talk about what those drivers are and what's pushing those costs. Some of those things are state policy decisions that we're kind of frustrated by, but be it as it may, that's what we have to deal with right now. There's a new tax that was passed last year in the legislative session. It's a tax for Maine FMLA leave. We've been advised by council to budget 1% of payroll. So for us, that's $288,378. It's another rather significant number. And then, as I've been sharing with you for a while now, ESSER, which is the COVID funds that we got starting in 2021, are now ending. And so they will officially end in September of '24, and we will lose $924,875 in personnel-related funds. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that means. So this year, just to be transparent, things are complicated because we have positions that were in the ESSER funds that are being moved into the budget. We have positions that are being reduced, and we have positions that are being added. So as we go through that description, we will do our level best to help you understand what those moving parts look like. So the individual school presentations, and we might as well cue that right up. But before I ask, come on up, Michelle. Any questions so far?
I have one question. So on the budget drivers, you mentioned that health insurance was a 12% increase or estimated 12% increase over last year. I'm curious what the estimated percent increase is on the special education. Do you have a percent?
I believe
over
that's
last year?
8%, Mark. So if you look in your budget books under total budget, special education is up 8.6%.
It's at
Okay.
8.6.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? You're on.
Okay, I'm pleased to be here to share East Auburn's budget request for this year. I'm going to start by explaining to you that we use the October 1st numbers for enrollment. So this year, October 1st, we had 154 students, a few adjustments in and out, and now we're at 155. Our projected enrollment for the coming school year would be 150. We'll continue to service kids in kindergarten through 6th grade, and you can see here our class average size by grade level. I would just note that the interesting areas to look at for East Auburn are 2nd grade and 5th grade as I go down through the list. So in kindergarten, we would have 1 teacher, so our class size would be 1 to 16. In grade 1, we would have 1 teacher and our class size would be 1 to 15. Grade 2, we would have 2 teachers and our class size would be 1 to 12. 3rd grade, 23 students, 1 teacher, so 1 to 23. Grade 4, 1 to 24. Grade 5 right now would be 1 to 27, so we'd be looking at that, making adjustments with 2nd grade if needed. Grade 6 would be 1 to 20, and total of 150 students with 8 teachers and an average class size of 1 to 19. Our staff changes that we can anticipate for the 24-25 school year would be a reduction of 1 teacher in ESSER, that would be in the primary grade, and also the transfer of 1 ESSER teaching position to the operating budget. Our initiatives will continue to be implementation of the My View, My Perspectives, and illustrative math curriculums, and also a real structured approach and implementation to the positive behavioral intervention system that we refer to as PBIS.
Thank you. Any questions for Michelle?
Hi, Pam.
So you talked about grade 2 having 2 teachers for 25 students, but then 5th grade has 27 students and 1 teacher. But you talked about, now, do you feel that you require more teachers?
Well, what that decision is right now is based on the work that I've done with Mr. Conrad and Dr. Brown and Dr. Doris about what our staffing would look like for next year. We're prioritizing just based on what evidence and best practice is right now to keep the lower numbers in the lower grades. So looking at second grade right now, thinking about one teacher and 25 students and trying to balance that with our upper grades and thinking about what that might look like for older students instead. But that's why I was saying we'll be looking at that very carefully and trying to make the best decision as we move closer to next year as to where the best use of that staff person would be.
Thank you, Michelle.
Oh,
Oops.
did,
Pat.
Michelle, can you explain, you're reducing one teacher because of the ESSER funds, is that correct? Then you're transferring the ESSER teaching position to the operating budget. Can you just refresh?
Sure. So we have two teaching positions right now in ESSER. And working with Dr. Brown, Mr. Conrad, and Dr. Doris, we decided as a team that we would be able to take one of those ESSER positions instead of reducing both ESSER positions and losing two teachers, which would mean that East Auburn would be down to only one teacher per grade level, and there's very little flexibility in a school our size. So with their help, they were able to support me in keeping that one extra position by putting it into the operating budget so that we can continue to have a little more flexibility in East Auburn to make sure that our class size is maintained.
Okay, thank you for that explanation.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next up is Fairview. Mrs. Bodette.
Can I ask a quick question, just in general on the process? At this stage, are we to know, like, if Fairview or East Auburn is requesting a certain percentage budget increase of their specific school? Are we breaking it down that way?
No, we break it down by cost center. So when
Okay.
you go into your budget workbook,
Yeah.
you'll see a sheet by cost center, and that's how we break it out.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
You're welcome. Celeste.
Hi. Okay, so I'm here to talk about Fairview. Currently, we have, our enrollment is at 489. As of 10/1, it was at 486, just a few extra students. And I'm projecting an enrollment next year of 490. Currently, this year, we have 24 teachers, and we range from class size to a low of 14 and a high of 25. If you look at next year, we're looking at 23 teachers, pre-K through 6, and you can see that our class size ranges from, other than pre-K, a low of 17 in 3rd and 4th grade to a high of 26 in 6th grade. That would be, again, 23 teachers with a ratio of 1 to 20. And then you'll see that I do have there are 38 students in my self-contained program, which is what the difference is in numbers. Our staff changes, we have a reduction of one teacher in the primary level, which was an ESSER position, and a reduction of one teacher at the intermediate level. That position was moved to Park Avenue this year to help with a shortage there. Our initiatives would be to continue to the implementation of our illustrative math, My View and My Perspective programs with continued PD opportunities for staff in the areas of literacy and math. And then we're looking to continue our implementation of PBIS.
Thank you. Questions for Celeste?
I guess I'm a little confused, actually, with both presentations as far as the staffing change. Reduction of one teacher, and then, so how would that look? And also with the East Auburn, like, if you reduce another teacher, then one, like, what is that
So
gonna look
my
like?
projection looks, so right now in kindergarten, I'm showing 3 teachers for next year, but this year I have 4 teachers. So that was the low of 14. And then we moved the position, so I only have currently 5 staff members at the intermediate level, but right now I have 2 in 5th grade, 3 in 6th grade, and I have to flip-flop that based on numbers coming up. So there would be 3 5th grade teachers, and then I have to reduce, one of the 6th grade teachers would have to move. You're welcome.
Anybody else? Good. Okay, thank you, Celeste. Park Ave, Stephanie.
I have to push this or not. I don't. Good. Thank you. I'm here to talk about Park Avenue School's budget for the coming school year. Following the same pattern as everybody else has presented, Park Avenue started the school year with an enrollment of 343 students based on our October 1st numbers. We continue to have steady enrollment, especially with our MLL population of students. So currently, when we made this presentation, we were at 377, but we had more enrollments today, so it continues to change. Our projected enrollment for the 24-25 school year is 360 students. We will have a total of 17 teachers, which will give us an average class size of 1 to 21. Our high class numbers right now, based on these, are in grades 3 and 4. Those will be the grade numbers I'm watching with a high class of 26. Looking at our MLL student population, since Park Avenue proudly hosts our MLL students, our total of identified MLL students for the projection for next year is 131 students, with 12 students in monitor status. That means that they have tested at a level in access that they're not being pulled for direct instruction. We continue to monitor them, and they continue to take access until they exit out of those services. Our current caseload at Park Avenue at this time is 142 students in grades K through 6. We have 5 MLL teaching staff members with an average caseload of 27 students per teacher. And again, those are not like a homeroom of 1 to 27. Those are the students that they service throughout the day. Staffing changes for the 24-25 school year will be a reduction of 1 ESSER teaching position and 1 ed tech position that's funded through ESSER. And our projected class sizes and numbers are based including those reductions already in them, to refer back to your question, Pam.
Questions for Stephanie? Yeah?
I'm concerned with 27 students per teacher in MLL. Can you explain how they handle that?
Sure. They are really good at having flexible schedules. I'll say that for them. They're constantly meeting and supporting one another. 27 students means that they might be going into, like our current math class right now, our math homerooms are really high right now. That's why I'm looking to change our 6th grade structure for next year. They go into the classroom to support those 5th grade students during math. They're centered in that room, so there's a larger group of MLL students in there for one of the MLL ed techs and teachers to be in the room to service. Then she might go across the hall to service 6th graders. Then earlier in the day, she might have a pull-out group of literacy students. So it's that push and pull model so that they can have many hits with students to meet their needs. And if we have level 1 language speakers, that would be students that have enrolled, they've recently entered the country, they have little to no English, then we kind of move, they have their homeroom, but their instruction is more self-contained. And there's a variety of grade levels in that space where they're all working on the same language goals. And my teachers work to support those students depending on what the needs are.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Thanks, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Sherwood Heights, Mr. Davis.
Good evening, everyone. Here to give you a little snapshot of the Sherwood Heights. Currently, our enrollment as of today actually was 304, and we have 4 more on the way next week. As you know, it's an ever-changing landscape. But however, giving a quick look here, you'll notice that this year we are fortunate that we have 2 teachers per grade level with decent class sizes ranging from 15 in the kindergarten all the way to 22 in 6th grade. We also have 2 sessions of pre-K, both at 15 students as well, morning and afternoon. We are also fortunate at Sherwood to be home to the district's behavior program, the STARS program. So we have 3 classrooms that are staffed with a teacher each, plus each also has 2 ed techs. And currently each room has 6 students. So and that's a very super well run program. Our projected enrollment for next year, based on the 10-1, and that's the consistent date that we've all are reporting on, is 284 students with an average class size school-wide of around 17, which is not far off from where we are currently at 18 is the average. And as we move into the staffing changes for next year, we do have one reduction of an ESSER ed tech position. We also are reducing one classroom teacher position that was moving, that was last year or this year in the operating budget and was a vacant position. And then we also are transferring one social work position from ESSER funds into the general fund. She serves as a great liaison to our behavior program, as well as helps with other things around the building. Like others, we will continue our commitment for a culture of literacy with our work with our My View and My Perspectives, working with making sure those programs are implemented with fidelity, and also increasing our family engagement with literacy. And we also will be doing PBIS and those things as well. But there's a snapshot on Walton.
Thanks, Mike. Any questions for Mike for Sherwood Heights? Adam?
I had a question about predicting enrollment and how you guys do that, and how predictive is it? Like, do you see trends, or is every year completely different and you only know 12 months ahead of time? How does that play out?
That's a great question. And as much as we, Dr. Brown has been really good to have us be consistent and, choosing a 10-1, which is a reporting date for the district. So that's been a pretty consistent thing. What we're quick to announce all the move-ins, but we also have a lot of move-outs. So in the summertime, we see a big transition. So I would say 10-1 is a pretty accurate. I mean, you're going to give or take, but it's pretty accurate. Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mike? Thank you very much. Walton, Mr. Dorr.
The school board is under the fine tutelage of our excellent superintendent. I have become the master of brevity.
Brevity.
As you note here, if you just looking down the average class size, that's a pretty healthy scan there. I think these class sizes are very workable, if you will. We have an excellent staff there, and not a lot of change coming from this year. And incidentally, the same staffing that I have now will be the staffing for next year. There'll be one change in the first and second grade. I would note to you, though, relative to staffing, there are changes that were made from this year, from last year, but I don't know a whole lot about that because I simply wasn't here for that. But if you have questions about reductions, for example, those are noted, and certainly Dr. Brown can speak to that, or Sue. The initiatives that we continue is a robust engagement in 2 new curricula in math and reading. And like my colleagues, the PBIS program is really making a difference in kids and behavior in a very positive way, and we're pretty proud of that. The staff changes you see there at the bottom, again, those are elements of which I know little. I know that there were those positions. And the special ed team leader, for example, is no longer at Walton. The nurse aide position has been what I've known this year as the nurse aide. I didn't know anything before that, but this is a good staff. You should be proud of them.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee?
I have one. When you did the average class sizes, the halves, what does that signify?
Well, that's just an averaging. And
So if I might, Walton is going to have a split grade, unlike many of the other schools. And that is because we have an unusual class enrollment in that grade, and he feels it's very important to be able to split some of the students into 2 classrooms. That wouldn't be possible if we didn't configure the grade as a, what have you got, a 1-2, Wayne?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. with two very good teachers. Actually, sometimes there's a little reticence to do split grades, but I'm feeling pretty positive about this one. I think looking back in a couple of years, we would see some real robust, excellent teaching there.
Thank you.
And I have one question. So current enrollment as of 10/1 is 183, and the projected enrollment is a difference of over 40 students for next year?
Yes.
Wow.
And that, I would note to you that the projected enrollment for kindergarten, I simply looked at the last 4 or 5 years and came to 16. It could be different, of course. We don't know that yet. But yes, there's been some change as I've sort of witnessed over looking at data from the past to this projected year for next year.
Do we know what the current enrollment is as of today?
It's 146.
As of today?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay. So that's a big change since October.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions for Wayne? We'll verify that for the
Okay.
next meeting to make sure those numbers are completely accurate. All set. Thank you. Next up is Washburn. Megan, that's you.
Thank you for having me tonight to discuss Washburn's budget. So as all of my colleagues have said, 10-1 enrollments were for Washburn 212. We are currently at 220, so a little bit of an influx. And you will note that we have an average of 1 or 2 teachers per grade level. We have a bit of a bubble with kindergarten, first grade, third grade, and fifth grade with 2 teachers. We have a range of class sizes from 20 being our highest and 13 being our lowest, aside from self-contained for next year. We have a reduction of 1 classroom teacher from the ESSER budget, reduction of 1 ed tech position from the ESSER, as well as transferring 1 of our classroom teachers from ESSER to the operating budget. And we will continue our initiatives with following my view and my perspectives curriculum, illustrative math, and responsive classroom will be implemented alongside PBIS to provide classroom community and student ownership within the building.
Thank you. Questions for Megan? Adam?
Yes, thank you. I had a question about, again, I guess looking forward from a staffing and budgeting perspective, how do you handle like the grade 3 bubble? Like as that group of 37 students, does a teacher switch to a new grade?
Yes,
Yeah.
so we kind of work with staff and see who would be the best fit to make that shift each year to accommodate those students.
Thank you. Anybody else for Megan? Okay, Megan, thank you. Auburn Middle, Mr. Wilson.
Hi. So at the middle school for the last 4 years, we're seeing a decline in total enrollments in October, but I will say, as everyone else has said, that we do get a lot of movements during the school year. We also have people who leave during the school year as well, so numbers stay pretty consistent. Our ratio is hanging around 1 in 20, 1 teacher for 20 students in the last 3 years. Projected enrollment is pretty easy to do because we know who the 6th graders are already, and we're pretty excited to have them come join us, which is very exciting. So we have 3 teams at each grade level. So there's 3 math teachers, 3 science teachers, there's 3 social studies teachers, 3 ELA teachers, and 3 special education teachers per grade level. So that's kind of what you're seeing here with the class sizes for this current year. Same with the unified arts. We have 4 unified arts per grade level. So that's what you're seeing here. So 2 PE and a art and a health and a FACS and a STEM. And there's a media studies in there. This coming year, again, we're looking at the same size class, same class numbers for each of the content areas. And again, same for the UAs. ELL, this number looks really high, but the middle school doesn't have a solid class. So we'll talk about that in a second. So total identified EL students right now, the middle school is 38, which seems high. We have 6 on monitor status, which means that they're in all number classes, but they receive assistance when needed. Our current EL caseload is 38. We have 1 teacher, 1 ed tech, and we have 1 ed tech position currently not filled. But because of our rotation of classes, our teacher can have 2 reading classes and 2 math classes. So although the number 38 seems large because the kids can rotate through a schedule, it's still a lot of kids for a case management, but the class is broken up into 2 reading and 2 math. So reduction. So next year we have reduction of an interventionist position that has not been filled for a few years out of the operating budget. And we're going to be supporting the literacy and math programs already in place. We're supporting the vertical classrooms, which is students using discourse to develop confidence in the content areas. We create structures for academic accountability in the community, teacher to student, and also students to teachers. We are currently developing a Tier 3 behavior intervention team supporting students who are in need of direct services due to behaviors, and support for full implementation of restorative practices and responsive classrooms as the year progresses. And we are fully in PBIS.
Thank you, Ben. Questions from the school committee?
Just a clarification, so the reduction of the interventionist position, so an interventionist, is that a behavior interventionist?
Nope,
What
that
exactly
would be,
is interventionist?
I didn't mean to talk over you. We had a generalist interventionist position in the budget for a couple of years. We had a teacher originally that was designed to be in that position, but due to staff shortages, we moved her into a content area, and that position just hasn't been filled.
What typically is an interventionist position?
So it'd be somebody who would go in to help a teacher with management, or go in and help a teacher with maybe an assessment, or pull kids out who need a different level of support.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, anybody else for AMS? Thanks, Ben.
Thank you.
Franklin Alternative. Ms. McLeod, come on up.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. I'm going to go over a little of the information for Franklin. Our projected enrollment is easy for me to calculate because our overall enrollment capacity is based on a 15 student per class ratio, which is best practice for alternative education. So with our full with a full school, we come in around 105 students. I'm fairly confident that we will be full again next year, as we have been full for the last 3 years. So right now, our current enrollment, the only class that is not at capacity is our combined 7th and 8th grade right now. There's 12 students in there, and we have 2 upcoming enrollments. So we'll be 1 away from being full in that cohort. We don't anticipate any staffing changes. And then as far as our initiatives, continued work on improving student achievement in writing and math, more collaboration or continued collaboration with our community partners, development and staff training around trauma-informed instructional practice, and increasing our ability to provide student support to build resilience and for academic success. So that's it.
Thank you. Questions from the school committee?
I have a question. I don't know if it's about budget, but the waiting list, the kids that are, you said you have to have 15 students per class. The kids that are waiting, where are they?
So they're typically at their sending school, and so our program, takes students from AMS, some tuition students from Lewiston Middle School, Lewiston High School, and then Edward Little. So if a student has been referred but there's not spots for them, then they stay at their current placement, obviously with some accommodations, usually. I would say that by the end of a student has never really sat on the waiting list for more than probably a full semester, because we tend to have transition either during the course of a semester and definitely at the ends of each semester, as students either elect to return to their sending school or they haven't met the expectations of the program and then are referred to a different program. So we almost always have at least one grade level with some student waiting for that opportunity. But again, I can usually have a placement for them within a semester. And then if anybody's left over at the end of the year when our seniors graduate, that of course then opens up a pretty substantial number of spots.
Anybody else? Thank you, Melissa. Edward Little, Mr. Anier, please.
Good evening. I was keeping tabs back there, and I think I have a solid 7 or 8 minutes extra from everyone else. Putting that out there, whatever. The first slide that we have before you is the enrollment, and so you can see the projections of where we've been over the last 4 years. Currently, our number based on that October 1st puts us at 976. Next year, we're projecting at 991, and that's based off of the 8th graders that would be transitioning up. So when you ask where does that number come from, that's where it is. But 933 moved up to 956. That 937 will actually get reflected later when we look at what the junior numbers are. So you can see that that trend stayed there, and then we've been moving our way back up at 976 and then 991, projected for next year. What this has before you is a breakdown of the average of teachers per department. Well, the number of teachers per department, sorry, we skipped ahead. But the number of teachers per department and the ones that I wanted to reflect, everything stays stable from this year to next year, except for the reduction in the aspirations department from 4 teachers to 3 teachers, which we'll talk about that when we talk about the staff changes farther down. Average class sizes, you can see where we are. Those numbers are off. It should say 22, 23, should be 23, 24, and then 24, 25. My apologies. So this is where we sit right now at 23, 24, because I can't project for next year yet. So 14.6 in English, 13.3, 16.9. The one that I did want to highlight, because it reflects the change that we had last year with health and phys ed, is the 19.7. That is probably my largest increase there. But what I would say is with the new building, now we have the full use of the field, the full use of the track, 2 gyms, and a full fitness room. So I watched that one very carefully because in that area, safety becomes a big factor, and actually the actual space usage has diminished any type of injuries and has been a safer space all the way around. So as you can see, where we are is 14.31 currently. And again, that's the average of the average. Breakdown of our ed techs. In the special ed land, our ed techs, we have 9. The other ed techs in the building, which would account for technology, library, supported study, that stays as 5. And where we are currently, we should have 1 in MLL and 1 again. That number has stayed stable over the last 3 years. 2 years, sorry. The rest of the support staff all stays stable. The ones I wanted to look at the bottom to highlight, the substance misuse, that's the contracted service. That's Chaz. I think he did this presentation about a month and a half ago. He's there Mondays and Tuesdays. And then our social workers, most of you are familiar with Corey. He's our employee. That's one of the 4. The other 3 are contracted service providers who are with St. Mary's and Spurwink. They have offices in our building. MLL population, we have 87 students identified through grades 9 through 12. 8 of them are on monitor status. Current caseload of 79. That was the subtraction of those 8 that are on the monitor. They're still monitored, but they're not on their active caseload. Teaching staff of 3 teachers and 1 ed tech, and their average caseload is 29 students. And very similar to what Stephanie described, they are supporting within class pullouts, as well as having direct instruction, and it varies based on where they score on their access and their language needs. Can be anywhere from 1 to the 4. We've talked before about the college courses offered. There isn't any significant changes there. It just is a pretty robust offerings. The ones that I did want to highlight is that we have now brought on the satellite programs from LRTC. We have the cosmetology, culinary, EMT, early childhood. We are bringing 4 more on next year: fire science, criminal justice, biomedical technologies, and I'll have to get back to you on the 4th one. But we're continuing in that phase-in process. And at the bottom, spring ahead with CMCC. Last year was our first kickoff year. We had 5 students. This year we have 10. Secretarial staff, that has stayed stable. The area that I wanted to highlight, because it looks funky, is the 3.5 and the 0.5. That's one person that splits their time between the main office and supporting the athletics. This one reflects, the next one, custodial food service, kind of reflects the growth of our building as the magnitude of it. So now we, instead of having 1 day custodian, we have 2, and he runs a split shift, so he comes in a little later to carry through the busy lunchtime, and then picks up the evening custodial piece later in the afternoon, as well as helps support any of the afternoon activities. Night custodians, we have 3, and there's 1 vacant position there, and we have 5 that work through our contracted service with Allstate. And the food service staff, based on Chris Piercy's recommendation, which runs through his line, is 7. Staffing changes for us. The graphic arts teacher position, which has been vacated, which has been vacant for the last year from the operating budget. 1 Ed Tech 3 from the ESSER fund has been eliminated. A transfer of 1 Ed Tech 3 from ESSER to the operating budget. The increase of JMG, which I think we've had a couple presentations, is 2 roles that happen: the dropout prevention and then the course offering. So there's an increase of $25,000 there. Transfer of the suspension diversion program from ESSER over the operating budget, 65, and then the continued contract service for substance misuse. Suspension diversion, that's a program we've been running for many, many years. It started through a grant under the city, and that's when a student is suspended rather than them stay at home. They work with a staff member not only on what led to that suspension, but also to make sure that they have access to school so they don't return back to school falling behind, and they do a lot of follow-up with them on their healthy decision-making.
Okay, that concludes the school presentations. Questions for Scott?
I have a couple questions. So in terms of MLL caseloads, like I noticed in Park Ave, it's 27 student caseloads. At EL, it's 29. At what point does a caseload, like how high does a caseload have to get before you need to add another staff person?
Yeah, that's where we spend a lot of time working and talking with the staff, as well as Melissa Hodgkins, our MLL coordinator for the district, about what are the needs that we need to be able to fulfill, how are they changing, how are they different, and what is best practice. And so I lean pretty heavily upon our teaching staff as well as Melissa of how do we fulfill that.
Okay. And then my other question related to the graphic arts teacher vacant position and elimination from the budget. So is graphic arts just not offered?
We haven't been offering it at all. We haven't been able to either, one, have a certified teacher or a teacher with that skill set. Okay. It's a pretty unique and tight skill set.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
I have a question to back up on that. As part of the new EL, isn't there like a formal spot just for graphic arts?
Yes.
Do you want to mention your conversation with LRTC?
Yes. So knowing it is a need, and what we've seen over the last few years is a decrease in the enrollment of that, and knowing that we have the space and we have the equipment. Now that I have Matt West, who is the assistant program director for LRTC, who's stationed there, as well as ongoing conversations with Rob Callahan, I've been inquiring, and we've been having a pretty strong conversation of turning that space not into an EL program, but to expand it into an LRTC program, which would, one, utilize the space, but two, allow us to get the instructor for it, because their certification and requirements are more heavily based on job skill, outside career independent skills, and that would open it up to the region and not just to Edward Little. And so we've been in a lot of conversation, and I don't have anything in hand to be able to offer just yet, but that we've been working toward that becoming a program that we would run at the high school, and it would be through LRTC.
Yes?
Because we already have the graphic arts program at Lewiston, would it be an additional program?
It would be, well, that one is called Multimedia Technologies, and this one would be more based on the graphic printing and the graphic screening, which is a component of the multimedia technology, but has more on the technology side. This would be the marriage of the two to kind of bring it back, so it has more of the product piece itself, and that's really what our program would be able to offer that would be different is on the product piece, whether it be a t-shirt or a mug or another type of product. And their instructor has been very, very helpful, been helping us guide us through that process.
Thank you. Any other questions? Pat?
I just want to say that's excellent, and I hope it works out.
Me too.
Great. Anybody else? Scott, thank you very much. So that concludes our presentations for the evening. Any final comments, questions from school committee members? Pat?
Can we get an overview of all of the reductions from each school combined so that we can look at it from up above?
Mark?
We certainly can, but in your budget notebook, in your sections for each school, you have a detailed staff listing, and at the bottom of each listing, you have that summary of reductions, referencing the positions above.
Embedded in here, is that what you're saying?
Pardon?
It's embedded in here.
Yeah, so it's embedded, it's at the end of each of your staff listings by school, and then if you go to each article, it's really a reorganization of your staff listing by article, but it also summarizes all of those reductions by article. It's, as Dr. Brown said, this has been very complex because we have some positions being eliminated from the operating budget, some from ESSER, some, when we say transferred into ESSER, you're essentially, roughly speaking, for every teaching position you're moving onto the operating budget, that's another $100,000. And then you're adding one new position altogether in special ed. The difficulty for us is that $945,000 we're losing represents 15 positions that are currently staffed. And we had 23 2 years ago, but we've been working that number down by either transferring some positions over time into the operating budget or leaving positions vacant. But it's going to be a very unsatisfying budget process because you have 15 positions you're losing funding for, and we've been able to restore funding for some of those. So you have a net gain of 2 positions on the operating budget, but you still have fewer positions in the district, and that's why you're seeing some of those higher class sizes. So it is that balancing act that's being proposed to you tonight, and you get to make those final decisions on what that balancing act looks like. There are a number of press reports. I was watching the news last week where Portland's saying, I live in Portland, they're saying they need a 10% tax increase if they don't have deep cuts. Some communities are reporting even higher impacts, and that's because everybody's losing those federal funds. So this is a very tough budget from that perspective.
Thanks, Mark. And just for the record, Sanford is saying 30% that they need to increase their local budget by in order to absorb that. So, Pam.
Okay, so I have a couple other questions. Going back to the Walton budget, I want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. So on the 24-25 staffing positions slide, in that header, it said that it reflects 4 teacher and 1 ed tech 3 reduction. But then on the next slide, under staffing changes, it's only listing the reduction of a special ed teacher and a transfer of a nurse's aide.
That's the correct one, the 2 positions, the special ed.
Okay.
Right, well, we're reducing a special ed and then transferring the nurse's aide from ESSER.
Okay, so that the header on the previous slide.
Oh, okay, we need to we'll correct that.
We'll correct that.
Okay, so we're not losing 4 teacher positions at
No.
Walton. Okay, thank you.
that it? Anybody else? So just as a recap, that's the Cost Center 1. And when we get together a week from tonight, we'll be going through Cost Center 2 and the other cost centers that are listed in front of you. And I recorded, I think Mark and Dr. Doris did as well, the questions that you asked. And if we answer them tonight, we'll put those same answers up on the website so people can see what they were. So that concludes our presentation for the evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Moving on to our student representatives report. Do we have a report tonight?
Yes, EL tonight at 4 o'clock started this year hosting the Special Olympics. That's going until 8 o'clock tonight. And then the only other new update is that we have begun the process of handing out iPads. This week we started with freshmen.
And how's that going?
Good. I think the transition is going to be a little different, but with added support from teachers and staff, that it should go very well.
All right, thank you. Moving on to superintendent's report, Dr. Brown.
Thank you very much. I just would like the school committee to know that I was invited to speak at the National Superintendent's Forum over the break. And they asked me to speak on navigating the political landscape as a K-12 superintendent, which I thought that would be kind of easy until I listened to some of the colleagues who are elected countywide. They're not appointed by school boards. And so the school committee sets their salary and essentially evaluates them, but they don't hire them. And so it's a very unusual relationship. And candidly, I much prefer the way it is in Maine and in Auburn because what happens, and these are some examples from Florida, is that if the committee cuts the salary of the superintendent, then the superintendent campaigns against school board members to have them unelected, which seems like a rather backwards way to do it to me. So I think we've really got it going on here in Maine. It was a very interesting conference, and it was good to see how other states run their schools and come back to Maine and be very glad I work here. Thank you.
Thank you. School committee chairperson's report. So tonight, I'm going to inform the committee that I have officially accepted the resignation of Casey McKnight from her at-large seat on the committee as a result of a work schedule conflict moving forward that does not allow her to be in attendance at our evening meetings. So while we are sad to lose her as a member of this committee, but we thank her for her service up to this point. As a result, there's going to be a special election held for this at-large seat, likely sometime this summer, so not the June 11th election date, pending city approval, as we have unfortunately missed the cutoff for the June election. So stay tuned for more information about that. I'm happy to report that Morgan Harper has agreed to be the school committee's assigned alternate to the city's ethics committee. So thank you to Morgan for stepping up if you are watching at home. And in terms of our superintendent search, the search committee will be conducting our first round of interviews with our selected candidates this Saturday, March 2nd. Following those interviews, the committee will select candidates to move forward to the second round of interviews, which will be held with just the school committee on Saturday, March 16th. And that concludes my report. Do we have a city council update tonight?
Yes, we do. A brief one. Thank you. Let's see. I've got 3 bullets here. Last city council meeting during the workshop, we had a really nice presentation from the LA Arts Organization. Among many things that they brought up, I specifically asked them how they kind of interface with the school system and students. And one thing they brought to our attention is they said a lot of their effectiveness and capacity in the school systems are the relationships that they have with art teachers and administrations. And they said they've always had a very positive relationship with Auburn. However, I think some of their contacts may not work in the Auburn School Department anymore. I think they mentioned a close tie with Mr. Rice, and I don't know if Mr. Rice works with us at Edward Little anymore or not. But so in any case, for whatever it's worth, if I don't know if there are already connections between the schools and LA Arts or the Auburn School Department and LA Arts, but I know they're eager, they're expanding. They came to the City of Auburn with a few grant requests to increase their programming and staffing. So they've always been present, they're still present, and they're eager to be involved. So I think most people already know that, but it was a nice presentation from them. Next, just some housekeeping from the City Council budget process. We'll be starting that process much the same that the school department is right now. We'll be having those open meetings on Mondays. Our next city council meeting is this coming Monday, March 4th, and I believe that is, we are breaking into the budget process. Thank you.
Thank you. We have our committee reports listed. We have minutes linked from the Finance Subcommittee meeting on the 14th and the Health and Safety Subcommittee meeting on the 5th, as well as the Facilities Advisory Subcommittee meeting on the 7th. Any questions about any of the reports?
I just wanted to say that the policy subcommittee from yesterday was canceled.
Yes, yep. Moving on to old business. Do I have a motion to approve policy AUB BEDH public comment at school committee meetings for a second reading and approval?
So moved.
Second.
Pat, second, Pam. Any discussion or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion passes. Moving on to a motion to approve policy AUB FA Facilities Development Goals Priority Objectives for a second reading and approval. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Pam and then Corin. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Approved. Motion to approve policy AUB FF Naming of Facilities and Grounds for a second reading and approval. Do I have a motion? Corin, and a second. Adam. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Motion carries. Motion to approve policy AUB FFA Memorials for a second reading and approval. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Pam, second.
Second.
Pat. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Motion carries. Moving on to new business. So a motion to approve a contract with Tyler Technologies to support a pro fund to the Munis migration. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Corin and Pam, second. Any questions, discussion? This was referred to in the Finance Subcommittee meetings minutes.
I mean, I don't have any questions, but I was in the meeting. Does everyone know what this is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good.
All those in favor? Motion approved. A motion to support an increase in the daily teacher substitute rate from $110 per day to $125 per day effective February 28th, 2024. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second, oh, sorry, Pat and then Pam. Any discussions, comments? Okay, all those in favor? Motion carries. A motion to approve the installation by XL Automation of a new rooftop HVAC unit at Walton Elementary School at a cost of $49,839 to be funded with the unallocated balance in the fiscal year 2022 capital improvements bond. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Pam and then Corin, second. Any comments, questions?
I would just make a comment here. I guess for the record, to acknowledge that this is not an elective expenditure. This is something that has to happen in order for that school to be properly functional. So that was something we talked about in committee, and I think it's important, worth noting, that's a large price point for a piece of hardware, but the option is to not do it and not be able to open the school someday. So
Yeah. I think it's necessary for the school to function next year. Yeah, okay. All of those in favor? Motion carries. Motion to approve a new job description for the Donald M. Gay Performing Arts Center Events Coordinator. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Pam, a second. Corin? Any comments, questions? Pat?
This position, this is just a description. There's nobody in that position yet. Is there an anticipated time frame for that? I know that this is anticipatory funds.
Mark?
Yes, so we, now that the job description's been approved, you already funded $20,000 in the current budget towards that position, and we'll make a similar request in this next year's budget. Now we will go about posting it and putting together an interview committee. It will be under the supervision of the high school principal, and we'll begin the process of filling it.
Is this a full-time or a part-time?
It's part-time. It's really going to be variable based on the initial startup needs of the position and then how it evolves over time based on the level of utilization for the Performing Arts Center.
Any other questions? All those in favor? Motion carries. We have our list of our upcoming meetings. There are a lot of them, so I would take note of them. Especially, I'll just make note of the March 16th special school committee meeting. That will be an open meeting at the beginning, but then we'll be going into executive session to discuss hiring of the superintendent. So, any future agenda items or requests for information?
On the list of upcoming meetings, is there still a March 27th Facilities Committee meeting?
Yes, I believe so.
Yes.
Correct, Dr. Doris? Yes, so we'll need to add that, March 27th, facilities. And that's from 3:30 to 5 p.m. or 5:30. Thank you, Pat. Any future agenda items or requests for information? All right, seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So excited. All those in favor? And we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Yeah.